justice for all. Roll call. We're all here, but Ken. Public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearing. Board rules and regulations for special permits and site plan approval.
Mr. Chair, do you feel we should take up some minutes approval or something while we wait for some public to possibly show up for our hearing?
That's not a bad idea. Why don't we move on to minutes approval then?
So on our agenda, we have minutes from 6/13/16. I move that we approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry.
And also minutes for 234 Summer Street from 6/13/16. I make a motion we approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right,
If you want to save a little more time, you could do committee reports and
we certainly could. Stormwater Task Force. I will add to, in addition to helping us look at the bylaws for Stormwater Task Force at our last meeting had a discussion about the acceptance of town roads and, the acceptance of roads become town roads, and the fact that the basins and drainage structures and all the access easements related to those become taken over by the town. We wanted, the task force wanted some input as to how we can better manage this in light of the new technologies for the stormwater, the sediment separators. Their storm scepters, their Vortechnic units. And they require the vacuum truck, which we do not have. And just in general, the maintenance of the basins, stormwater, and I brought up the point that when 50 Elmwood Road came before us, that I specifically asked about the drainage and how could they not do low-impact development on the stormwater. The soils were perfect for that, and they didn't seem to give a second thought about it. They just went ahead, no, we're going to use this. And that it has a storm scepter or similar that requires the vacuum truck. And there was a comment by someone, and I don't remember who, and I probably shouldn't name names anyway, but as far as the potential for just not accepting the roadways if they have this type of technology that we can't support as a town. So that was the specific thing that I was asked specifically to address with the board. So if we've got some thoughts on that.
Is it mostly new technology that's going to be needing
In general, I mean,
truck?
I would say that a vortex separator is not new technology. I mean, we're going on 2 decades of these being used regularly.
it's new to our town.
Correct, but it's not unique, and I think that the planning board could alter its rules and regulations to lean towards low-impact development as a primary with fallback to more conventional pipe and pond. I think some of that needs to be done in conjunction with a discussion with the Stormwater Task Force, with the DPW director, and I think that as far as stormwater programming goes, those sorts of issues would be identified after the compilation of a new stormwater management plan that would outline what we've been doing, what we think our future needs would be, the things that we'll need to be addressing and that will be important. We have the ability, I don't know if we have the ability, but there are companies that do catch basin and other cleaning that will own a vacuum truck. It's not the most efficient necessarily, or maybe not always the most cost effective, but in the short term, it's something that we could do to manage those, especially where we're probably looking to clean them once or twice a year at most. But it's a discussion that I think this board should have, because I think we need to look at our rules and regulations moving forward and how they could be updated to be more contemporary, and how they could more reflect the character that the town wants to carry on, as opposed to just, well, here's a set of rules that we've been using for 25 years. So I think it's a discussion that's worth having.
Has there been, excuse me, I didn't.
No, please, go ahead.
Has there been any input from DPW on cost? Any evaluation of?
Well, not specifically in Stormwater Task Force, but when I was on capital planning last year, the request was in for a new clamshell, which is what they clean out the catch basins with. And I made the point that this $180,000 request, it needs a truck, which they reused one of the old plow trucks, which we're going to pay for again next year. But it's only going to add to the $400,000 cost of a vacuum truck, which we really don't need at this point. But there's nothing you can't do with a vacuum truck that you can do with a clam digger, but it doesn't work the other way around. So Jack's input was that he doesn't have room in his budget, and he doesn't think that a request like that would pass. He does see a need coming up, but in conversations with him, it doesn't seem unreasonable to outsource it for a decade or so before, we've only got, 2 or 3 of them active in town now?
Yeah, I mean, even if we had a dozen of them.
Right.
My experience with something like that is you're probably anywhere between $75 and $150 a cleaning.
Oh, okay.
And, it depends on the vendor, it depends on how many you have, it depends how often you do them, but it's not an exorbitant amount, even if you went up to $200 a cleaning.
At this point, it would be,
You know.
it would make sense for the next 10 years.
Potentially.
Yep, okay.
At the same time, there would be a considerable maintenance reduction, time required, because the vacuum truck will clean out a basin much quicker than a clamshell and much more efficiently. Whether it's a Vort Sentry or one of these separator units or just a regular catch basin or a manhole.
There's, I think that there's a more comprehensive life cycle cost analysis that would need to be done to determine because you pay twice as much for a vac truck. It cleans at a faster rate. I don't know if you need a special license to run it or not. And then the maintenance on a vac truck tends to be more regular and more, and I don't want to say more necessary, but there's more likelihood that it will break down than, a clam shell. There is maintenance on those, and they do break down, and they're hydraulic, so as much fun as any hydraulic breaking down is, with the vac truck, you get into seals and suction and all this other stuff. So, I know enough to be dangerous and make outrageous claims. I couldn't do a full cost analysis, but I think that again is something that would be very worthwhile putting in the stormwater management plan as a task. Let's look at the hard numbers of the difference between the two, and I think that's where the task force is most going to benefit from starting, is with the plan. Finding out what we're doing, finding out what we need to do, assigning some tasks, and using that as a basis for doing cost estimates and coming up with real tasks and real numbers. I think that this is something that should be included in that, and we should look at our rules and regulations anyway, and that would just be a small component of them.
We haven't really met since the last, we're going to meet on Thursday, this coming, so there's really nothing new except for that. Moving on to Agricultural Commission. They had their 4th market last Sunday. The meeting, the last meeting was last week, and they've decided to sponsor the July 25th band concert. There's going to be baked goods available and a 50-50 raffle, with the proceeds going to 4-H. And the Right to Farm signs have come in. They got a grant for road signs at the points where you enter the town, and they bought 8 of them, and there are 6 planned locations. I believe it was 72A on both ends. 225, I have a plan,
13.
13 both ends probably, so that's 7. And there was another one. And then they also have the extra 2 on a sandwich board that they put out in front of the farmer's market on Sundays. That will be put in, and hopefully DPW will begin installing those shortly. And that's about it for AgCom. Building Reuse Committee?
Has not met, nor has capital plan.
Okay.
School Building Committee has not met, but David asked a question about tours. So on the public schools website, I believe there is a list of dates throughout July that they will be giving tours, and I think you can pre-register online for that.
I have a question about that. Do they talk anything about the building at Turkey Hill at all, or just the new middle high school?
As far as renovations, or?
Building committee, the school building committee.
No, I think Turkey Hill's pretty far out. I had brought it up in regards to the Green Communities Task Force, and Mr. Londa was of the opinion it was some years out that any renovations would.
Well, I drove by there on Sunday, and there's a steel structure up where the
That's where they're.
trailer used to be.
That's where they're putting the new
Maintenance.
maintenance garage for the facilities director or the facilities equipment.
So they added a trailer for temporary use for 20-something years, and now they're replacing it with a maintenance garage?
Yeah, it's going to be 20 by 40, I believe, is the size of the maintenance garage.
Oh,
Or
nice.
25 by 40.
All right, anything else? The Green Community Task Force?
We have not met. Nothing to report.
Montechusett Joint Transportation
Ken.
Commission is Ken, and is that also MRPC?
No.
No, MRPC is mine. No meeting until, it's gonna be the end of July now, so. And open space, no meeting has been called.
Okay, and then...
that I'm aware of. I
okay.
don't have any emails, so.
So we might as well move on to development status reports.
Or do you want to do the public hearing?
There's not any more public here.
I think if we wait for the public, we could be waiting until next week. I mean, we can do development status reports, it's just, so Chase Road, so that would be the Lanny Orchards APR. The state is willing to purchase the preservation rights for the orchard. And the Board of Selectmen is looking for comment from the planning board.
I have my copies.
I believe this was scanned to all of you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we're essentially looking at it as far as commenting on the property being preserved. We're not going to get into the cost, where the money comes from, any of that. That's for the town manager and the Board of Selectmen to be concerned about. They're looking for input to ensure that there isn't a reason we would oppose this.
Personally, I support it. I feel like that parcel of land has, if it were not preserved this way, has the potential to be developed in a way that most people would think is not beneficial to the town. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to preserve the agricultural nature of the area.
I agree. I think that parcel has been used for quite a long time for agriculture, and buying the APR rights guarantees that perpetuity. I think it's a good move.
I guess my question, on page 3, letter C, when they check yes, does that mean they've implemented all of them, A through G?
Page 3. Okay. I'm not seeing a letter C on page 3.
Yes.
Are you near the end? Is that the original application?
on the confirmation and notices. Application form,
Oh, you're looking at page 3.
page 3, sorry.
It's actually like the fifth page.
Yes, but,
Oh, I'm sorry.
basically it
I was on
says-
3 or
So
4.
Yep.
they have established an agricultural commission.
Yep.
I believe.
We
we
are
have an
right to
active
farm.
But see, I think,
Well, if you look through this is the new form. If you look further into the application, I think it was scanned to us anyway. The previous application, yep, it's on the second to last page on the back side. That's pretty much the same questions,
okay,
and those were their answers. And I'm glad you asked, because this gives me opportunity to point out that by having an established agricultural commission, having a right to farm bylaw, and a farmer's market saves us quite a bit of money. Normally, our percentage would be 20%,
right,
and so now we're only obligated to pay 10.
right, and I believe that expedited the process as well, because we have those.
But it was interesting that the 2012 application for the same property, we were able to circle commit, and now we'll be able to circle existing.
Do we have a way to track so that we're not permitting unacceptable uses? If they
Oh,
are?
I like that
That's-
question. Yeah.
Is there something attached to the deed or something that would flag it as preservation so that we wouldn't even be able to accept?
It is a deed restriction that goes on.
It is a deed restriction. I would have to get back to you on that because I would have to check with the building inspector on how he does that internally.
Okay.
I know for scenic roads, which is vastly different, he does keep a list and he maintains them on the driveway permits.
Okay.
So that when people apply, it says right on the driveway
Right.
permit that this is a scenic road.
Do they include that for like chapter lands or anything like that?
No, because there's no restriction on permitting on chapter lands.
Okay, it's just the tax.
Yeah, it's a tax code issue, and so with like a chapter land, what the house that's associated with the farm, you don't get the chapter benefit on a parcel equivalent to a buildable land. So if you need 80,000 square feet and 200 feet of frontage, they draw a square around the house that meets those requirements, and they tax you as a normal single family for that, and you get the 61 benefit on the remainder of the property that is being used agriculturally.
Okay. I mean, this property's pretty visible. I mean, it's got a long history, so I'm sure if somebody was going to put an application for that one, but.
Well, and I think that currently,
have any ones
our
that-
building inspector is well familiar with the town and is generally familiar with where there are the APRs that exist, but that doesn't mean that he will always be the building inspector or that it wouldn't be beneficial to have that tracking system. They've committed to it, so I'm not going to say that they haven't done it or that they have. I would have to double check on that for you.
Okay. And then, I guess my other question is in regards to what it can be used for. I thought there was a list.
Yeah, it's very clearly written out.
Oh, right here. It cannot be developed for residential, commercial, or industrial purposes. Would solar fall under that, or?
Yes, that would be commercial.
So it'd be
My
viewed
my question was the promotion of commercial agriculture.
That's a good question, because we would want that, I would think.
I would
Well, they
think.
are currently using it
Yeah.
as commercial agriculture.
as- Right.
So is that going to restrict the current use?
I wouldn't believe so.
I mean, they-
agriculture is agriculture.
But they specifically say commercial.
Well, I think by definition, the kind of agricultural land that they're looking to preserve is going to be commercial agriculture. I mean, I can't imagine that the Lanny family could eat as many apples as they grow. So you're either just growing apples to grow apples, or you're making a living off of them. So I think agriculture by definition is just the growing of produce or other goods, whether they're animals or not. So I don't think the nature of commercial or sustenance is even brought up. I think when they say commercial, it's a commercial enterprise, a retail location that is not associated with the agriculture.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
So are we looking to vote to support this, or?
Yeah, I think they're looking for a recommendation, whether you're for or against.
So I move that we support the acquisition of Lanny Orchards, 294 Chase Road for agricultural preservation.
A second.
Excellent. Any discussion?
I just want to, there's been some discussion since my time here about Chase Road as a place for commercial development and for a potential expansion of industrial and other uses with the introduction of sewer as a possibility and all of these things. And I just want to be sure the board doesn't see the remaining of this parcel on that visible corner as a detriment to any potential economic development. I'm not saying that it would or wouldn't be, it's a question that I think falls within the board's purview, and I think it's worth at least considering. Again, the town was built on agriculture. There is an active commercial component to the agriculture there, so I think it would fit in with that, but I don't want to go without at least raising that as something that the board may want to at least have some discussion about.
Yeah, personally, I feel like it abuts Northfield Road as much as it does Chase Road, which is a scenic road, and the other side of Chase Road is conservation land. And most of it is in people's backyards too. So I don't see it as a prime commercial spot. Oh, developers probably see it as a prime commercial lot, but I don't think it'd be good for the town.
Fair enough. I just wanted to.
Is there the ability at some point in the future to have this rescinded, say if the money was given back, or?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so. I think once you do it,
That's it?
you're in.
This is not like chapter, you can't be taken out of.
No,
It's-
Right,
this is the mob of preservation. 'Cause
And-
it's a permanent.
Well, thank you
deed
for
restriction.
raising the issue.
And just to further point out, the APR currently has protected over 800 farms and, what was it, 65,000 acres, which is an average of 85 farms. Oh, I'm looking at what I wrote. Yeah, so there's considerable amount of land in the state of Massachusetts that has already been taking advantage of this. And also, this town is based on agriculture. This town was always agricultural, and it has only been in the last few decades. I grew up here in the 70s, and there were tractors going up and down. At least 20% of the roads that are currently paved were dirt. And I have seen multiple farms that my family personally used to hay that have grown houses. If you've got no farms, you'll have no food. And I like to plug the use of farming and living with animals and growing food. Self-sustenance is a very valuable way of life that it seems to be being lost, and it's a shame in my mind. That's part of why I enjoy AgCom so much, is because it's a shame in their mind as well. So there's a motion that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Excellent. All right.
I don't think your public is coming.
No, I don't think so either.
We'll do the public hearing.
So, yeah, I
We
guess
sure
we're
that
gonna,
the doors downstairs aren't locked?
so, this is opening the public hearing, right? So do we need to go through the,
I have it here.
excellent?
Craig's going to read it.
Town of Lunenburg, public hearing. The Lunenburg Planning Board will hold a public hearing on June 27th, 2016, at 6:35 PM in the Joseph Pilata Meeting Room, Town Hall, 17 Main Street, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462, to discuss a revision to the board rules and regulations for special permits and site plan approval. Materials are available for viewing at the Planning Office, 960 Massachusetts Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass.
All right, so you all have seen the rules and regs many times. In your folders tonight is a 5th edition. It does include some of the stuff that Matthew had sent me. I also got a couple of comments from Fred Hamway of Hamway Engineering. One was, it was a footer that ran into the body. One was a simple word change, and the last was the 53G language and the third-party inspection language conflicted. One was an account at 25% would be renewed, and one said 10%, so I switched the 10 to a 25, so when we get to 25, we'll say, you need to give us more money. So Matthew, you sent me quite a comprehensive list. I did make some of the changes. I did question, well, we'll go through. I made the first, second, and third. They were pretty simple. The PLS I did make. I didn't want to remove civil engineer, because the majority of what we're looking for people to submit are going to be civilly engineered. If there are other engineering disciplines that go with it, they should be professional, but the civil is the most important for the majority of them.
Sure.
You made mention of page 4, section 2.3, and specifically inserting the word workshop and regular evening meetings. My feeling is workshops are essentially special meetings. How you handle and what you do at a special meeting is kind of up to you, but it's still a special meeting. It's not a regularly scheduled meeting.
Right.
This town has a very interesting proclivity for wanting to have workshops. They're still public meetings of the board. If you choose to use that special meeting to address a specific item and not do other agenda items, that's great, but there's no difference, in my mind, to a meeting and a workshop. They're both the same thing. You still have to follow the open meeting law, you still have to do all the same stuff.
No doubt.
Workshop is just a title, I guess. So, but if the board wants to include it in there, we can. I didn't, because I think, again, it confuses the issue, because it makes people think that there's a difference between a special meeting and a workshop, that they might be handled differently, that they might have special rules, and they don't. And this isn't the only board that uses them. The Board of Selectmen talks about, setting their third meeting aside, and they're going to do a workshop.
I would tend to agree. I think that, the language within that meeting is, it's going to be a workshop.
Yes.
So it falls underneath the heading of public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, my thoughts on that were twofold. For one, I don't see a need to air our dirty laundry, so to speak. So if we're going over rules and regulations and bylaws and different things, the nature of people these days is to be politically correct and not offend anyone and not say anything that doesn't sound like it's going to sit well with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of problems with our bylaws, and I think that it might behoove us to do it off camera, but still record it in a public meeting fashion in our planning office. And the second part of it is that if we come up with questions and contention about what has gone on, what has been done, then we will be in the room that has all the documentation, all the records of all that, so that we could pause and look for backup material in that meeting, workshop.
I would tend to disagree that it shouldn't be on TV. I feel like we have a hard enough time getting public awareness for what we're trying to do now. I don't know if our lack of viewership tonight is because they've heard us talk about it too much, or because they haven't heard us talk about it, but I feel like anything we can do, or anything we are talking about, the public has a right to watch us talk about it.
No doubt.
I'm going
I
to
would
come down in the middle. Well, again, with this, we're on now draft 5 of the rules and regs. I think to get the work done, if we need to have a special meeting, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be televised, but I think to not have the meeting just because it can't be televised is not great. I think we could accomplish a lot, as Matthew said. I mean, still keep it an open meeting. Since things of this nature, we're posting drafts online anyways, they can read it and review it. We would still be having a public hearing, which I would hope would be televised, but I would like us to have the opportunity to, just for the sake of getting things done and moving forward quicker, to
Sure.
have those special
I think
meetings,
it's
regardless of.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I just don't think, for the first and second draft, I don't think they necessarily need to be televised.
I
mean, if it,
That's
the
what I would
schedule
want the most
accommodates it.
feedback. Personally, I think making the most mistakes sooner in the process and getting corrected on those is usually the better course, rather than think we've gone this far and people are coming in the last minute to chime in and they feel left out because they weren't there for the beginning of the process. I think the beginning of the process is when you want the people involved.
I got to agree with Damon. I think it's while I also agree with Matt that having access to files and everything is, I think, critical. Sometimes you're really, you're delaying things because you got to wait for stuff. But I think that televising it outweighs that by far, just because I have no problem. I think that we need to air all of the dirty laundry and get it all out there in the public. I think it helps. I think it helps to get. I wouldn't even be here if I hadn't gotten ticked off one night watching one of these proceedings. I think it does help people get involved.
So I just want to clarify. I mean, I think this is great discussion. This isn't in the rules and regs. What we're talking about is policy on how we hold meetings right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should air our dirty laundry. The bylaws are a mess.
Yeah.
And the more we say that they're a mess, the more people will support moving forward and changing them. I agree, we shouldn't not hold a public meeting because we can't be televised, but we should make every effort to be televised as much as we can, because it puts the record out there. People get home late, they sit down, they're eating dinner, who knows? I used to catch myself watching public meetings all the time just because I'm a nerd. And so there's people out there who want to know what's going on and they do it. I'm just talking about the specific language of special meeting or workshop within the bylaws or within the regulations, as far as they outline the advertising, holding, and time constraints around those. I don't want to stifle this discussion, but I also think that we probably want to move through the document because it's beefy enough, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of points that we want to talk a little bit more about. And if we want to talk about how and when we develop a policy for meetings, we can do that. And I would say we should do that as a board issue, or if you want, I can prepare something for the next meeting. And we can talk about the issue of the files and waiting and that kind of stuff, and kind of figure out what the best way to handle that is. So that's.
I guess it really goes back doesn't it go back to Matthew? Does that mean?
Well, I don't have a problem removing the workshops. I just didn't want it to go away and soon be forgotten about.
Yeah, no, I don't think that they should go away. I think it's a semantic wording. Special permit site plan, I capitalized all the site plan stuff. Fee schedule, I did change and add in the date of the fee schedule adoption. You made mention of fee for extension. That is outside of these. That is under subdivision. If I'm not mistaken, those fees were adopted after the time with which Highfield filed. Therefore, they couldn't be held subject to them, which is why they haven't been charged a fee up until this point.
Really?
Similar to zoning bylaws, you can't retroactively apply.
Oh, we weren't looking to retroactively, we were looking to curtail the
Well,
continuing and future ones.
But they filed under a fee schedule and a set of rules and regulations that were prior to that, so they're held to those fees and rules and regulations. So if someone were to file new, they would be subject to that.
Okay, I don't mean to be pointing fingers and making a big stink about little things, but I I remember that Damon and I were on the previous board, and we discussed fee schedules about extensions, and we had it put into the fee schedule, and then the next time they applied for an extension, it was clearly said that they had paid the fee, and then I brought it up at another extension, and then I was told there is no fee for that. But I actually printed out the fee schedule, and it is there. It's
Yes, it is on the fee schedule.
Okay.
You're correct. I mean, I can look further into that, but my understanding was the date on the fee schedule and the date of their original filing
Okay.
are separated.
Sure.
And therefore, that was without doing a lot of research, that was my quick and dirty answer to that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Adam, before we get too far ahead, on page 6, section 3.5, the site plan waivers. So now, in these rules and regs, the waivers are supposed to be submitted with the application?
Correct.
And how do we deal with a late waiver request? Say they come in and didn't know something needed to be waived, or whether it was, I'll use Highfield as a
Well, but
example, they didn't know whether it was,
Highfield is a subdivision, so it wouldn't fall under these. But
well, just a late.
yeah,
Say they missed something and said, okay, now we want a waiver for this 3 months into it. How do we address that? Would that be a cause
be
for
similar to-
resubmittal, or?
it could be. I mean, and it depends. I think it depends on a lot of things. If you ask them, if they come in and they submit something, and the board looks and says, gee, we really don't like this. Can you redesign it? And they go and redesign, and they say, we redesigned it, but now we think we need this waiver for one thing or another. That's new information, and I would suggest that they would submit it under the new information clause in section,
Point 2.
in 4, yeah.
Okay.
So that you would have the time to review it, and they'd still be submitting the same documentation. The purpose of this is, if we're looking at it and there's something that's just blatant, and they haven't submitted the waiver request, it's a reason that we could turn the application back, or it would give you a reason to not hear it and say, we need this, it's an incomplete application.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I just want us to have the ability to take pause. If they
Yeah,
submit
yeah.
something late. So
And
how do we address it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it precludes them from submitting something late, but the intent is that they would identify what, if any, waivers they need ahead of time, provide the list and documentation on why they want them.
Okay.
And that sort of ties into Matt's next point, is that in section 3.5, it says not cause detriment, and he's saying it's different than being in the best interest. And yes, they're not the same. I don't know how the board I mean, we've talked about it, we can change the language to why it's in the best interest, or we can leave it as it's written. And you can make a determination on whether the cause of the issue not causing detriment becomes in the interest of. That's kind of up to you guys.
Well, I think that's standard language for
It is.
any kind of a zoning issue.
I mean, in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the rules and regulations. So not causing detriment to the neighborhood and town is clearly in the interest.
Yeah.
I know they're not the exact same thing,
But usually on zoning findings.
Yes.
That's one of the chief findings.
Correct.
Is that it does not cause a detriment to the.
that is correct.
And then as far as the submission requirements, I know that was kind of our checklist on page 9, section 4. Are we actually going to have a checklist?
Yeah,
of who oversees to make
Marjorie's
sure
put one
that-
together, and I've kind of been noodling around with it. I haven't finalized it, but, I mean, right now, the text of the regulations will be the checklist.
Right.
And we'll come up and finalize an actual form that will go into the file that we'll use as our checking over when they submit.
I just want to, it kind of makes it so things can't be overlooked.
Yeah,
If
that's,
something is overlooked, we can address it immediately.
Mhm.
And then I guess my final comment here was on delinquent accounts. Is there a way to include language that say no approval will be given until those are brought up to date?
What page are we on?
Page 8, H.
Oh, delinquent accounts fees.
Just, or that no work shall commence unless, I would prefer they have all their fees paid up to date before they're allowed to start
This is
construction.
53G. Yeah, we wouldn't approve anything without those accounts being brought up to date.
Would it be a denial, or would it be more of a, you can't start a condition?
We wouldn't give them their approval paperwork
Okay, until they pay.
Until they paid up.
until
Okay.
they'd paid up.
How does constructive,
There's no constructive approval for a site plan.
Okay.
And honestly, you can approve it, and we'll sign it. We just won't give them the paperwork to record, and they can't, and we won't sign off on a building permit until that paperwork is recorded. So that, I mean, we can write a policy that you can adopt, and sign, and we'll just put it in the drawer and notify the town clerk of it. That's internal operation.
I would just like to follow up with, with Dave's comment, that is a zoning issue, right? So, as a planning board, I was hoping that we could get the language in there that was specific to our planning goals, rather than zoning, which we can help, we can write bylaws, but when it comes to zoning issues, it goes to a different board, a different group of people.
Yeah.
So, if it was clearly delineated that was this and this, then it might be more impetus to,
So you're suggesting not only would it not cause a detriment, but also would be in the best interest of the...
that was just why I brought that up.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
I think that
Just want to
sounds
say
good.
it twice, because it says it in the first line.
It does?
Well, we're back on 3.5, right?
Correct.
Planning board may, in any particular case,
Oh,
where
yeah.
such action is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the rules and regs, waive strict compliance with these rules and regulations. It just finishes with not cause a detriment.
But the request for waiver shall be included within the submission requirement. So, yeah, we can waive it, but the request, the specific request, by adding that, it would require them to tell us two ways that it's not a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a detriment, and it's a benefit.
Mhm.
So, for them to put Highfield Village again, put dry sewer pipes, it's not a detriment, but it's not a benefit to the town. Anyways,
Okay, that's an interesting point. So it's not a detriment, but it is not in the best interest.
I guess the way I read it is we're
Think
We're even entertaining it because it's an action that's in the interest of the public, and their application is proving why it's not a detriment also.
I'm not stuck on it, I just wanted to make that heard.
So on page 7, Matthew, you, 37B, you asked about incomplete may be denied, an incomplete application may be denied. I made it a may for the purposes of not being required to turn someone away because they were missing one item. We can notify them and tell them that their application is incomplete and give them 48 hours to complete the application prior to denial. If it says shall, I'm obligated to call them and say, your application is denied. You don't have everything. So may gives me the power to do so. Shall requires that I do so. And I know on something like not having included the check, that can be for so many reasons. And it would be, it shall be deemed incomplete, but it may be denied.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My thought there was trying to avoid having incomplete applications be advertised, have the public show up, and then, oh, sorry, they don't have everything they need, so we're gonna continue it. Come back next time.
No, and that's, and under the submittal, this is the 53G submittal, if I'm not mistaken. But under under 3.1 on page 5, we rejected for lack of information will be notified within 5 days of the decision. So if they don't have all the information or haven't requested waivers, they'd be considered incomplete and they would be notified.
Now, that notification is going to be before the public notification?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's, yeah, that's excellent.
Because once we open the public hearing, and we start taking testimony, do we lose the ability to?
Reject an application?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Well,
that's-
you don't lose the ability to reject the approval, just reject the application.
Right.
We have the ability, when they bring it in, to say this is an incomplete application, we're not going to schedule a public hearing.
Okay,
And so a public hearing won't be scheduled until we've determined the application is complete.
complete, okay.
Justification for 18 sets. You folks all get a set, all the in-house tech people get a set. So that's the 18.
Is it 18?
It is.
Okay.
The 4 drainage, 1 for us, 1 for DPW, 1 for Concom. And it's nice to have an extra to tear apart if you need to.
Yeah. We have a GPC binder in
We do.
planning? Excellent.
We're high-tech. Under 10, I made the changes. They were all really just, and I didn't put proposed wells, I put proposed water system under 17, because if it's public,
Under 17?
Page 10?
isn't it 17?
No, I was pointing out the existing wells.
Oh, on existing proposed water, okay, yeah. I would say water system.
Well, simply because there are, minimum setbacks from soil absorption systems to the well.
Yep, 100 feet.
Yep, and you're not required,
To do that with,
your property offset is only 10 to 15 feet for the septic, so there really, until recently, hasn't been a minimum setback from property line to a well. So somebody could have a well
On the property, yeah.
property practically, and then that would negate the ability to develop 100 feet within the adjacent property for a septic, and likewise, the other way around.
well, it's all on-site, existing and proposed, so I'm just going to call it water systems, potable water systems.
Yep.
And that would cover both wells and septic,
I guess,
or wells and town water.
because when we get a plan and we ask for a locus, they show a couple hundred feet around the property line, but no information within that couple hundred feet. They just show it zoomed in on the little tiny lot, and that doesn't really help us.
And 19, in tabular form is on there.
Yep.
We did get one comment from our review engineer for number 24, and I assumed that it was clear, but I guess it wasn't. The signature block should be in a consistent location on all pages of the plan set. Oh, I don't think he had this modification.
Preferably is.
Preferably the bottom right corner of the plan.
You need some kind of grammar there. You need either a comma or something. No? Preferably. So,
Is that, yes, preferably,
yeah.
set, comma, preferably the bottom right. You're correct. Style guide down there.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I appreciate it.
His landscapes must be good with the attention to detail. Actually, they are. I've seen them.
And I added the end-or under page 13, application, part of the application 14. I don't think I think there was something extra in there on page, well, there's nothing on page 14 anymore. So there's an extra return in there.
Yeah, I guess it was you had die minimus change, so you changed it.
Yeah, I kept switching back and forth. 7-1D. Okay, so that's that. I don't even know where this one is. I know I looked at it.
What are you looking for?
Section, 5.3. Oh, that's the appellate. Page 13, B2.
Applicant instead of appellant?
Yeah, no, it's beach parking size and alignment. Oh, B4. Oh, it's supposed to be and/or.
Where are you?
On page 13, number 4, curb opening dimensions and locations, provided such opening has been approved by the Lunenburg Highway Department and/or MassDOT.
It's like, I guess where I was going there is that if it's a mass highway.
Yes,
if
it should have been and/or all along, and it was just, I did something.
Well, I mean, they're required to have a curb cut permit
Yes,
application.
yes.
But we don't have any requirement for us to have seen it. And I'm not sure that that's important, because there's a lot of stormwater stuff that we don't necessarily see. There's a lot of DEP, there's a lot of state applications for these projects that we don't see, but there's no way for us to confirm that they've actually gone through with that. And the state departments, I don't think they're going to be looking at the little things that we do to make sure that they've been applied for.
My experience with MassDOT has been that if someone goes to them and applies for a curb cut, they say, do you have local approval? And if they say no, they say, don't come back to us until you have local approval. They're generally uninterested, and they won't give, they might give off-the-record comment, but they won't put anything in writing. They want to see what the locals do as far as approving the curb cut, and then if you go to them and they have a requested change, they do it with you, and then they send you back to modify. We can, and we only have one road right now that MassDOT controls. And I know that I am very explicit with people when they come in on Mass Ave, that make sure you go and talk to District 3 about whatever curb cut you want to do, because ultimately they can just say no. And they changed the entire Highfield Village project 10 years ago, because the original concept was coming in off of Mass Ave.
Right. Which is the opposite of the situation you just put forth. Well, the town wanted it, and the DOT said no.
Correct. Well, again, they always reserve the right to say no.
Sure.
But they do defer to the town in most initial instances. The revisions will add the date, and that's all the info that you had. So I don't know if anybody else has more changes?
Greg had a comment.
Yeah, I just actually had one more question about
Sure.
on 12, section 4.2 supplemental documentation.
Yep.
When we request renderings, I know like with Northfield Road, the one we just recently, not Lancaster
Yep.
Ave, we just did one. I'd like to see pictures of actually, like, they take pictures down the road. I'd like to get a head-on view of,
Okay.
like when we're determining scenic road.
Okay.
They took pictures up and down the road, but didn't include our point of interest, which is the trees that, like a dead-on shot of where the driveway would be. I know with Prospect Street, they took them up and down the roads instead
Yep.
of, I just didn't know.
I think we just need to be
Part of
more
this.
clear. We just need to be more clear
our
on
direction.
when we ask. I
Well,
think.
and that wouldn't be under supplemental, because supplemental is stuff they're submitting after the initial public hearing to readdress concerns or changes. So we would want to go back to,
23.
is it, yeah, it is 23. Perspective views that demonstrate the project relation to the surrounding parcels in street. And I guess we could add language in there that says something to the effect of including, how would you, I mean, I know how I would phrase it, I don't know how it would make sense to an architect, that would make, I mean, including head-on view of the frontage, I don't know if that's the appropriate way to,
Well, it's not necessarily like an architectural thing. It's
Scenic road,
it's
I mean,
existing
if
condition.
we're-
well, but the scenic road isn't covered by this, because it's neither a special permit nor a site plan.
All right, then with 274 Prospect Street.
Well, but that's what, yes.
I mean, I thought we gave pretty clear direction, and they came back with views of up and down the street, and obviously the view will not be impeded because the road's there, so.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know if we could just tighten it up so that we knew,
Well, I would
I guess
think,
it's up to us in our direction, but.
we didn't have this language at all last time. We were kind of on the fly about it. I would think as an architect, asking for the project's relation to the street covers what you're asking
Okay.
for.
Okay, and that's
Then
why-
again, it's, anyone else can interpret their own way, but that's.
But that's why I ask. And, well, and I guess what we can say is, we can tell, if they don't provide that, I can say, no, they're going to want to see a view into the parcel from the street. And I don't want to just throw a bunch of language in here to
Right,
have more
right.
language in here, but I also don't want to not put something in here if it doesn't cover it. If, if you think it covers it, Damon, I'll defer to Greg. I'll put whatever you want in here.
You're saying from, I'm sorry to interrupt.
He's saying, like, if you were doing town hall, going and standing in the middle of Main Street, looking at town hall to have a renderings, to understand
Okay, so
how it's going to look from standing in the street looking at the parcel, as opposed to at, 30 degrees of the street, and you're just kind of,
So couldn't you just say, architectural elevations depicting the proposed facade, comma, materials, et cetera?
Basically, what I would like to avoid is us giving them direction for,
Yeah,
and just having them not providing what we had asked for and then having to come back at another meeting to do it. I just,
I would just say architectural elevations depicting the proposed facade, comma, materials.
and I
So that,
know,
so you're not just getting facade material, you're getting the facade materials,
right,
well, I think the architectural elevation covers the facade.
right.
And I think the materials is listing it and showing it on that rendering.
Yeah, okay.
And I also would take some comfort in the fact that these are going to be prepared by a registered architect. Unlike
Yeah.
last time, they just had somebody do it, and honestly, they showed us trees because they're trying to hide how ugly the buildings were, so.
Right, exactly.
I think if you're asking an architect to produce these things, that's clear direction to them.
Now, should we say prepared and stamped by?
It does.
It
Does.
Completely
Documents shall
understand
be completed and stamped by a registered architect.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't see that.
Is that what you meant?
That's, yeah, basically, I just want to make sure that we're not asking for something, having them bring us what we're really not looking for, and then having them have to come back. But I guess us being more clear is the only way to accomplish that. Because each one is different, I mean, depending on what you want.
And I think that's also a big part of it, is they're all going to be slightly different, as we've seen.
True. You're gonna, some of these-
So I guess I would respectfully request that the board approve the draft with the changes as made and excluding the very last page that is the application, because I don't want the application to be part of this. It's an administrative document that I'd like to be able to play with in-house and not have be part of the rules and regs.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? I would like to see the checklist incorporated into this.
I think I would
That's really
ask that we not do that for the same reasons, that it be an administrative document that we can change and alter to make work, rather than having to go through the advertising public hearing process. When it's finalized, if we use it for a couple of months and it doesn't work, I'd rather not have to bring it back and do a public hearing,
That sounds
find out
like
it doesn't
great.
work, come back, and I mean, even if we're talking minor tweaks, like, okay, we know these 4 things have to come with every application. Let's pull them out of the checklist and the ability to get a waiver on that. Let's make sure they're fixed. So that's stuff I like to play with administratively.
Okay. No, and I totally agree with what you said about it. My secondary goal there was that that this is great. This is almost there, but the whole reason for it was to have a checklist that was taken care of before it comes to the board, so that administrivia is very easy to get pushed off a year or 2 or 5 or 10. Or
No,
never.
it'll be done before I won't say the end of this month, but the end of next month.
Excellent, okay, perfect. All right, so moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
All right, do we need
Thank
to,
you.
we need to close that public hearing?
Yeah.
All right, it's closed. So we've gotten all that. Director's items.
So we did the APR. We will do the Summer Street decision. Everybody ready to sign?
Is it a problem if I sign in red, Adam?
I'd prefer blue or black. It's not a problem for me. I don't think the registry digs red.
Have
You can use a
feelings.
pencil?
Got some pens.
I think pencil is less archivable than red ink.
Can't sign in blood.
Just erase it.
And purple like a 12-year-old girl.
I used to always have a non-repro blue pencil on me. Back in the days when there was such a thing.
They still exist. They're just harder to find.
They actually still make them, you know?
That's what the internet's for. There was one there for me, right? Thank you.
Going back?
That's the
Weren't there 2 pages? Oh, it's on the back. Excellent.
Marjorie doesn't let me print single-sided. You don't let me print single-sided. We're running out of paper. This print's really small. It looks so much bigger on the computer screen.
This is the same as what you emailed this.
Yes, yes it is.
I have not seen that, so I'm going to be reading.
Please do.
Because my email's down.
Must have been an interesting task for you being a new guy and having to come up with the history of the project.
I mean, we have quite a collection of records. Marjorie keeps excellent records, and it's all very organized and easy to go through. And quite honestly, she did the ridiculous chronology, and that helps
Yes.
keep everything in order. So
Yep.
it would have been much harder if Marjorie weren't there.
A lot of things would be.
Yes, they would be. TV set is not frozen at home.
Sorry, yeah.
We're reading.
I guess my question would be in regards to the withdrawal without prejudice on October 18th, 2006. Is that,
Nothing I have ever heard of.
well, that's what is that when they requested that the preliminary decision be rescinded, or is that something separate?
My understanding is that is when the planning board voted to rescind the preliminary approval.
Okay.
By way of general information, preliminary plans are essentially, you drew it on a napkin and you bring it into the planning board and you say, hey, I've got this piece of land, I want to put this road in with these lots, what do you think? The planning board looks at it and says, cool, 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 or change this, or we hate it, and they vote. And then that plan does nothing other than shorten the time clock that they have to approve a definitive plan if a definitive plan is filed within 7 months of that approval. So by the time clock as it was then, I would have to do more research and go back, but generally, you can't extend the approval of a preliminary plan, or you don't extend the approval of a preliminary plan. They did an extension. Then they applied for a preliminary cluster development. And then the preliminary plan, revised sewer allocations, extension, another okay, so there's extension of the preliminary filing, okay. So they approved it in July of '05. So by the time they were looking to extend it to July of '06, it would have been on the precipice of expiring for the time period bonus.
For the preliminary.
For the preliminary. And then when they asked to withdraw it, it would have, I don't understand what the purpose of all of that was. So rescinding the preliminary plan, I don't know what benefit they hoped to gain or thought they were gaining from it. The preliminary approval is really just enumerating any potential issues that would come up with the definitive and giving the applicant a general understanding of the board's feelings on the plan as it's proposed. It has no magic powers. It doesn't relieve them from any submission requirements. You can grant waivers as part of preliminary plans. Generally, the only thing that you would do that for, or that I would recommend a board I was working with do that for, would be stuff like length of dead-end road or distance between two exits. If you have a 200-foot requirement and there are 197 feet and you're like, all right, this really works, otherwise we like this layout, and you approve that as part of the preliminary plan, you get it on record and they can carry that through the definitive. And if there's a change or you kind of eliminate the hassle of that being a problem later on. But I wouldn't do anything more than that. I wouldn't get into any sort of road grades and stuff until they were in the definitive.
I'm concerned, I don't see anything in here about the quality of the land, which was a lot of the subject of what of our discussion. And I don't see that in here. Is that for a technical reason, or?
It's not the zoning. The zoning board doesn't care about the quality of the land.
No.
It's up to this board to adjudicate that.
Okay. So you want to just keep it out, and then when it comes to us?
we certainly, I can include it in there. I know we talked a lot about it. I didn't have it in my notes as something the board wished to put in there. Matthew and I were chatting a little bit beforehand, and he mentioned that the Conservation Commission, to his recollection, we're concerned about the usability of the land. And I want to go back to 5611. And the purpose of the cluster development is to encourage the preservation of usable open space, comma, agricultural lands, comma, and forest lands in the town of Lunenburg, and assist in preserving the rural residential character of the town. So, usable is one of 3 categories of land that the bylaw is looking to preserve. So I very much understand that usable land is something that people are interested in and wish to preserve. This area is currently forest land, which is one of the 3 types. It doesn't say the forest land needs to be usable. So focusing on the inability to use the land, I think, neglects the agricultural and forest land that they're also including as something they wish to preserve. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't meet the 10%, because it is in the bylaw. But it also, goes, then we go into design, and there are 6 elements that this board can review as finding that the land meets these and is acceptable. And the first one is existing farm and appropriateness of land for agricultural use. Again, which wouldn't be usable open space, it would be agricultural. Environmentally sensitive land, appropriateness of the land for recreational uses, that's usable. Land relative to other adjacent and nearby open space lands, doesn't, usable or not usable doesn't say. Location of land relative to other development sites, again, not necessarily usable or unusable. And the area of roadway providing frontage to dwelling units shall not be calculated as permanent open space. So I guess there's only 5. So I kind of purposely steered away from that, mostly because what I thought the board wanted to do was provide information on this specific request. And I think that in reading the bylaw further, really sort of taking time and digesting it, you could have this ugly, scrubby forest that provides habitat that no one can get to, that the town might jump up and down to take as open space, because it connects 2 other open space parcels.
Sure.
And gives, the horny-toaded deer, frog, space to grow. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm not saying that we can't include more in here. We can certainly add to the letter. I didn't want to spend a lot of time, and I didn't have it in my notes, but it didn't register to me as something that went towards the application that they put in front of the zoning board. That's an argument they would need to make to this board. If you want to make mention of it, so that they're, again, not surprised when they come back, we can certainly do that. I focused on more the high points of their arguments on why they should get it, and what this board talked a lot about last time as counter arguments to those.
Okay.
So again, it wasn't a purposeful blah. It kind of a failure of me to write it in my notes, and then reading the bylaw more and more, I saw more room for wiggle back and forth, and didn't want to try to nail down one side or the other.
No, that's fine. I guess, we can always, if we have to, we can always ask for an open space committee opinion ourselves.
And I did, I did send an email to both conservation and open space.
Yeah.
And noted to them that we were sending a letter, and that they may wish to meet and review this and submit their own comments to the zoning board, so that they could make an educated decision with all perspectives represented. I know conservation is meeting on Wednesday to discuss this, I think along with the APR that we discussed earlier this evening. And I do know that open space reached out to the office inquiring about posting requirements, but that was it. They didn't actually post an agenda or a meeting.
Open space?
Yeah.
Because it is on the conscom agenda.
Yes, yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay.
I thought this was a well-written letter, and what I appreciated about it was that it kind of stayed on topic with items from their application to the ZBA, which I think is important that we do, and, because there's a million other things we could say about the project, but as far as a letter to them about this application, I think it accomplishes that.
And that's kind of what I was trying to do. I know when I get information from other boards, if it's all over the place, it's much harder for me to bring it to you guys and say, hey, here's their concerns. So I tried to use what they were submitting, what they were talking about, and I didn't send it around to you guys, but I've got a stack of information, the project chronology, all the letters from Marsden Engineering, the excerpt from the definitive plan, and the preliminary approval, all to be submitted with this to the zoning board. So there's no, they can't say, oh, well, we don't, show it. It's all there. And they can make of it what they wish.
Cool.
Since the Concom is meeting on Wednesday, Wednesday or Tuesday?
They're meeting Wednesday to discuss this.
Can we CC them on this as well?
Sure.
So they have this to discuss? Okay.
I mean, I don't know that this affects their discussion, but I can certainly make sure that they have a copy of it.
Very good. I'm sure that a good number of the Marsden comments were something that they would have concern with.
Is this considered just a special permit, or is it a variance?
It's a special permit dimensional variation.
Okay,
So it is just a straight special permit.
okay.
And my understanding was that was put in place due to a high volume of variances taking place, and there being a concern from the building inspector at the time that the zoning, if you looked through variances across the state, I would say somewhere between 90 and 95% of them wouldn't stand up to a judicial appeal, and this was their way of avoiding approving variances incorrectly or inappropriately, and they went for a special permit. So they look at the appropriateness, the ability of it to fit into the neighborhood, all the things that the subjectiveness of special permits. It passed the Attorney General, and my understanding is that at the time, there used to be a gentleman named Don Schmidt who worked at DHCD, who was sort of the state's zoning guru. And at the time it was written, I guess there was some discussion with him, and this was something that a couple of other communities had undertaken and felt was working, and so they went that way. Yeah, that's all tertiary, so
Okay, yeah, it's just.
it may be completely incorrect.
Different set of questions regarding how it impacted the surrounding neighborhood if it was a variance as opposed to a special permit.
Now, in my experience as a design engineer, the variances are almost never given for new construction. And I mean, this is not even an existing non-conforming reuse of anything. This is,
Well, but it's also not a variance.
well, okay. It's a variation.
It is.
It's a variation from our dimensional regulations. Okay.
Legally, it is not a variance.
No, but it says vary.
You're correct.
Okay.
I think I got it.
That's up to the ZBA to
I was
decide.
gonna say, I don't know what else to tell you. It's in the bylaw, so people avail themselves of the methods that they have that are legally outlined in our bylaw.
So are we ready to make a motion on this?
Do we need a motion on this? Is that what we're, an approval?
Yeah, I'd like the board to vote on the sending of it, because I specifically say that you voted to do that.
I guess, sorry, I just had one more question. What supporting documentation is going to be attached to this letter?
He's got it right there.
All of this? Just the timeline?
It's the timeline. It is 4 letters from Marston.
Okay,
It is the excerpt from their definitive filing.
Okay.
that you brought up last time and their preliminary approval.
Okay. And are you going to attach your letter that
They included that as part of their
they
application.
have it? All right.
So,
Okay, I just want to make sure the ZBA has it in front of them. Okay.
the only thing that will change is, I added a superfluous E to the chairman's name. So I'll take that off.
Excellent. No, it looks good.
All
Looks
right.
good. Thank you for the work.
So I make a motion that we approve or endorse the letter written by Adam dated June 27, 2016, to be sent to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Highfield Village, notice and communication. Any notices and communication?
I believe they were scanned to you. Nothing of note.
Meeting schedule.
So, it's going to be one of those summers, guys. The board voted to take the next meeting off due to my absence, hopefully Damon's absence for for the birth of
Daddydom?
his first child, and I believe Ken may be traveling then as well. And then August 8th will be a special town meeting. So I would expect we would not meet that night.
And there's no.
So our next meeting will be the 25th?
Yes,
Okay.
July 25th.
No applications to be reviewed yet.
No, I don't have any as of yet, so I would just push everybody at that point to the 22nd.
Is there anything bylaw-wise that you had, since we have some downtime seemingly, that we should jump into?
I've been working on the use table stuff. I had developed a use table based on the text that exists in the bylaw. And I've been using the planner's dictionary to go through and take each of the uses that I had identified and put together the definitions that are outlined in there for what I feel are the closest defined uses to present to you guys and have you start kind of going through.
Yep.
I guess I could probably send you what I have. I'm only through like the first quarter of it, and it's already 10 or 12 pages. And again, you know, there's between 2 and 6 definitions for each thing that I've kind of outlined. They come from all over the country. I don't expect that we'll pluck one of those definitions and use them. We certainly could. I would imagine we would take it and either hybridize it or find a way to morph it into something that we want. I also have a feeling that some of the uses you might look at and go, what does that even mean? Why do we want to use that as a use? And kind of start shifting from there. So it's such a, it's so large and it's almost, it's so nebulous that it's hard to really wrap your arms around. I've been struggling about how to really approach it. I think it's probably the most important thing that we have hanging out there.
I think I agree with that.
So I want to do it in a thoughtful way. I think that once we start talking about what uses we have outlined and what we think we might want, we can really start to narrow down definitions. And I think it might be a 2-part thing. I'm thinking that in the fall, once it's cooled down a little bit, I might take the camera and try and walk some of our main drags, 2A, Electric Ave, Summer Street, and get a series of photographs and try and outline land use-wise what's there as opposed to zoning-wise, and then start talking about how we shift the allowable and permitted uses in each district to be inclusive of what we want there, and maybe looking at shifting how some areas are permitted to either more reflect what's there or more reflect what we would like to be there. It's I don't know, I keep changing my mind because every time I start doing something, I'm like, oh, I don't think that's going to work, or oh, it's going to work, but wow, it's a lot of work, and we want to do it right, but we also don't want to be doing the use table for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that that's the most important thing. It's really crafting the framework and the language that we're going to use to describe any other change we make in the future. So I think to effectively make other changes, that to really have that hammered out is the most important thing, to me anyways. It'd just be nice, if it's going to be a slow summer, that we could get some of those things.
Yeah, and I'm trying. Well, and I don't think it's necessarily a slow summer. I think it's our meetings are sort of hiccuped.
Yep.
But yeah, I would like to get the use table moving forward sooner rather than later. And I think that, I'll cede some of my time over to Greg, because he and I had a discussion this afternoon. He mentioned some potential zoning issues, and I know that he had brought some stuff to my attention that he's concerned about revolving around the letter that the building inspector had sent out to you guys in regard to the Whalum overlay. So I don't know if you want to outline your thoughts now or wait for board issues. I think it kind of fits into the discussion we're having.
I'd like to talk about it now.
Sure.
If it's fine. We did receive another opinion from the zoning commissioner regarding that property. After just recently going through the process, I think it's something that we should address sooner than later. I think that the overlay bylaw isn't working. So I just would like to inquire as to what we can do. I think it's a disservice to the residents to not address it that did show up for the, went through the whole project, and I've actually had several of them come up to me offline and thank me for our involvement and our ability to deal with the project that benefits them and the applicant, and I think this is a step backwards.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
actually, I had a similar thought, that it's not working. And I think the main goal of that overlay was to develop the Whalen Park site itself. That's been accomplished. I'm not sure, and it's such a small, almost do-nothing overlay as it is. It's so ambiguous. I almost would be in support of just stripping it, or suggesting that we get rid of the overlay
It didn't
until
work.
we can come up with a better, well-crafted.
All I can add is, on a personal note, and from constituents in that area, that's my area of town, my quadrant, and it is just seen as a hideous wreck from the beginning to the end. So, yeah, I mean, it's there. I don't think that using that as a model for extension of the hideous wreck makes any sense anymore. So, maybe it's time to take a look at something like that, getting rid of it.
Whereas I think it's hurting more than it's helping now. I mean, it'd have to go before town meeting to
Correct.
remove it, right?
Correct.
We've still got a couple days before the warrant closes.
We can
I
get,
would
I mean,
support striking it,
yeah, I would
honestly.
support that as well.
I would.
We'd have to get it written up before.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's unreasonable.
Right, all you have to do is remove Whalum overlay, remove section 612 from the bylaw. It's
I
not,
can't imagine there be any resident who's gonna come here and say we shouldn't do it.
Right.
I haven't heard an abundance of input supporting what they've done with the waterfront.
No, I've heard nothing but negative feedback.
I think we have the opportunity to do it now, and I think we should take action.
And I think it's a very valuable area of town, and so many better things could be done with that area than what that bylaw is allowing for.
Yeah, we have our boat launch, we have our beach. It's a well accessible area. I mean, the approved Whalum development had some retail aspect to it that has not even been looked at, has it?
I don't believe so.
And I believe that still would remain commercial if we got rid of the overlay, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it wouldn't even affect that.
No, that was part of the approval of the Whalum's development. wasn't it?
It wouldn't change the fact that it was zoned commercially, though.
No,
If
but
I remember correctly, there was a portion of the lot that was dedicated to commercial use and a portion that was dedicated to residential use.
Of the existing, the undeveloped?
Of the 6 acres on the opposite side of
Okay.
Electric.
Now, is that, okay, I'll ask that later.
So is it feasible to get that for special town meeting? Do
Yeah, I can do that on Wednesday.
you like a motion?
I
that
would
we-
love.
Yes,
I-
you would need to vote because
Actually,
the
yeah, I
board
would
would
like
be
to
the
ask for a
sponsor.
motion.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we draft something up for special town meeting that strikes the Whalum overlay district pending us writing a better use for that area.
I'll second.
Excellent. Just further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okey-doke.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that was basically spot zoning that was very similar to the solar fields. It's ridiculous.
Come up with something better now.
So, another question about the, since we're still on the meeting schedule. August 8th special town meeting was called by the selectmen on the 22nd, which was last Tuesday, probably, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
And the warrant closes on the 30th.
Yep.
Which is,
Friday, Thursday.
so what was the special town meeting called for?
I believe there are several power purchase agreements that they need to finalize, that they brought forward at the annual, and I think they'll also cover the Laney Orchards property in order to allow for closing within the required 120 days.
Okay, so it also includes the APR.
Yes, my understanding is that it does.
Any idea how many articles are on the warrant?
No, I think the town manager did sound out, at least myself. I would assume she sounded out the other department heads to see if they had anything that would qualify. I think that if there's a dozen, I would be surprised.
And does that say anything to a fall town meeting?
It doesn't. There was a discussion about that at the selectmen's meeting. I have to admit to only half paying attention but if I recall correctly, it was stated that there most likely would be a fall town meeting based on the fact that the governor's budget is still in flux because they've had some revenue shifts at the state level, and the town is really unable or would need to have that finalized budget and cherry sheet numbers to button up all their little budget bits. So they'd probably have a special in the fall. Don't hold me to that, but that's my recollection
Yeah.
of the discussion.
Yeah, I had watched the meeting today, actually, before coming, and the power purchase agreements were the driving force for having it. I don't think it was to replace fall town meeting per se, but they wanted to do what they had promised the residents at the last town meeting, is to bring power purchase agreements before the residents. So I don't think they aren't dead set on not having a special town meeting in the fall, but they want to make sure they have enough to support sending out the warrant and the expense of it.
Now these
But I
pu-
think the money to be made off of the power purchase agreements justified spending the money to have the special town meeting.
Super. All right. August 22nd is our public hearing for Highfield Village.
Correct. And July 25th would be our zoning article special hearings for the August 8th town meeting.
Okay. Moving on, is there any public comment? Seeing none, I will move forward to board comment concerns.
We never addressed board goals through the director's items.
You can do that as an issue.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, well, we did request Marjorie to send around, she said she'd combine that and send it out tomorrow, what we had done
Oh.
previously.
Okay.
That was the only discussion that I recall having, but I think that will be beneficial because my recollection is that we had 17 different things that we wanted to accomplish in the next whatever period of time. And we had itemized it and assigned individuals to it, which I think would be a great format because it identifies certain things and certain individuals.
And we've had some board turnover since that was put together, and I just think it's something that all 5 of us should be here for. Not
Right,
that it-
definitely. And again, I guess I requested that we do this because I have confidence in the people sitting at this table that we can address some of these issues. I think we are capable of achieving some goals that we have, and
I would like to commend this board for the great advancements that we've done since we've gotten the 2 new members. Thank you very much. You guys have been putting in a lot of good stuff. I did want to follow up on a noise complaint.
Yep, I did speak to the woman. I think the complaint was coming from a property that was much closer than she expected. It was stump grinding that was within the permitted hours and will only happen for a short period of time. And she was provided with the construction schedule, and the building inspector did go and speak with the project applicant and the project manager and reminded them of their obligations and their schedule. So
Okay.
it was handled, and she was satisfied with the answers.
Excellent.
What's happened with water department? They got a gravel.
They're
They
still-
got a nice gravel driveway now.
They're still finalizing their designs.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I did, 8 Mass Ave, the car detailing, is that still,
It looks closed. Oh, no.
I had inquired as to whether or
Yes,
not
I've-
it would have
I've
to come
spoken to the
before
building
us.
inspector. He is told the gentleman he can proceed at his own peril. The former car dealer is also for lease. I did have a young woman contact me about wanting to open a boutique. That was about as far as she was willing to expand upon what would be sold there. And I suggested that her and Mr. Detail get together, file a joint site plan approval application to eliminate the, oh, well, this guy's going to do that, and just cover it all under one with the property owner. And I don't know where they are with that. I can take a ride down there and follow up with him. I've spoken to him before. He's willing to do it. He's aware of what he needs to do. I don't know if the property owner contacted him and said, don't do it because I've got this other woman on the hook and I want to.
Because when they did do the ZBA approval of that, they did represent that they had a special permit for the car dealership. They're 2 separate addresses.
They are.
It's one address, it's one site. but
one
it's
site
4
with-
separate
yes,
addresses.
yeah.
So I think there was some confusion there with the ZBA meeting. They said they already had a special permit, but it was for a different
Yeah.
location. And then also the deck hockey, have we received, they've already received the ZBA special permit?
I got nothing.
So, okay.
No one seems to have any contact information for this gentleman. I've spoken to several people and informed them that he'll have to do site plan approval. I think, I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently he doesn't have email or a phone.
And I heard something about the discontinuation of baseball at Marshall Park. Have you heard something about that?
I have not heard anything like that.
Okay.
I would take that up with the Parks Commission.
Parks. The Goodrich Street intersection of Lancaster Ave, it's just not safe.
I would take that up with the DPW director. That's an operational issue.
I've heard things about that. And then, can we require preliminary submission before somebody comes to us with a definitive?
Well, if you do an industrial subdivision, yes, preliminary is required in most instances. Can you? I'd have to look into that. I don't know legally. For what purpose?
To avoid something being in planning for 12 years.
They did a preliminary,
They did, and they withdrew it, and then they just submitted a
but they
definitive.
didn't withdraw it. They got an approval.
What does it say right
Well,
here, Adam?
they got an approval and they asked for the approval to be rescinded, which I don't understand.
Withdraw without prejudice is what it says.
Okay, well, I don't know how you withdraw an approval. So,
I don't know either,
but
but it's on,
I don't think a preliminary plan would, whether they withdrew it or not, would have changed anything with Highfield Village. I think when you require a preliminary plan, you're putting an additional step in the process for someone, and all you do is you actually draw out the process. In most instances, developers who are looking to build and are willing to or ready to and hire engineers who will design the plan and follow through, will design a well-designed subdivision, submit it as a definitive, get the approval and move on. I think a perfect example would be 50 Elmwood. They didn't do a preliminary. They were in planning for 9 months. They're 75% constructed, and it's 2016. They were approved in the spring of 2014. So they're they're about 2 years into having an approval, and they are just banging away on houses. They put them on the market, they sell them. It looks good up there. He's cleaned up all the stumps. If you go up there and say, "Hey, Mike, can you do this?" Sure, I'll do that. So I don't think it's the process. I think it's this specific development. And I think that a number of things have happened, and I think a number of the people involved have been an impetus for this. I think the previous project engineer was probably in over his head, and I think that had a lot to do with it. I think the project proponent, while well-intentioned and successful in other manners of development, has not performed residential development prior and relied a little bit too heavily on somebody who was out of their depth for advice. And
In the engineer.
yes, and I think he's seen the error of his ways and is now diligently working to move this forward, is the best I can say. I think that in the past year, since the switch of engineers, while there may still be issues, we're continuing to see forward progress, and we're continuing to see follow through on commitments that are made based on the board's comments. They may not be exactly what the board desires, but they're at least following the process and working to make things happen.
In the rules and regs 3.1, it says applicants are welcome and encouraged to schedule one or more pre-submittal meetings with the planning department. Is that like the in-house
Yes,
tech meetings?
yeah. Well,
And who-
that could be a variety of different things. That could be tech meetings, that could be, hey, can we come in and sit with you, Adam? And I do that on a regular basis with people. And just to kind of, what do you want to do? I would never tell someone I know what the five of you are going to do, but I think over the last year or two, I've sort of gotten to understand what you want in general from an applicant, and can sort of direct them on, you really don't want to do that. Or, hey, okay, this looks good, I think they can buy into that. But you're going to have to bring it and show it to them. But we do, every time there's a submittal, we do have tech review come and look at it prior to it getting here,
And does
outside of
the
minor stuff.
chair sit in on those, or are you?
No, I said, it's a staff review.
Okay.
There's none of the volunteer board or committee members sit on those.
if I recall correctly, Joanna used to sit on those.
Not while I was here. She may have done it in the interim between
That's
Marion and myself.
You gonna leave work and come down for tech meeting anyway?
I might. Yeah, no, somebody needs to be, some of the volunteer people that are elected need to be keeping tabs on the paid individuals, I think.
I have full faith in Adam to perform his duties.
Oh, I definitely have full faith in Adam.
And Marjorie.
And Marjorie, of course, as well. All right, any more board comment? Entertain a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
When was the
Thank
last
you.
time you guys